Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Life is a byzantine array of mazes and signals, random paths, and coded tracks. While many find their most sane and content moments fall along the NPC routes of the most popular form of conformity that offers the least resistance, others burn with the need to keep probing further, wandering farther, and peeling away each layer to find out what else might be waiting right beneath our fingertips. And sometimes those people's journeys lead us to places we would least expect. Here to remind us of the profound hidden within the profane, I am honored to welcome to Rogue Ways my brother, my lifelong friend, and one of my best teachers, Brandt Brown. Brandt, thank you for being here.
You are very welcome. That was very nice. And now a lot of pressure because I have to prove that I have wandered other ways and have probed deeper than the average NPC.
See, no pressure. You got this.
Okay. No, I'm happy to be here. This is very exciting for me.
Cool. Awesome. So before we dig into the show, let me remind people that Rogue Ways can be found on YouTube, so you can see our faces while I chat. While we chat, and on the podcast apps that you might have if you'd rather get some shit done while you listen to us banter. And Rogue Ways is proud to be part of the Eyes Open Network. This collective of creators is comprised of myself, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day, and Brad Tracy of JFK to 9/11. These incredible creators will get together at least once a month to blast the world with our wacky antics, our topical, philosophical wanderings, and nearly illegal amounts of fun. This content will only be available for Patreon members of Rogue Ways, so go to www.patreon.com/rogueways right now to subscribe. And Brandt, we have
subscribe now.
Yes, thank you. And you can also hit the like button and the subscribe button on the channel if you're enjoying this. I never have said that before.
It's worthwhile though. It works.
People forget to do it, and it really does help.
It does.
So the pointless question of the episode today is, I'm still stuck on the snow theme because this is like the second week now that we've had snow here, and it's not very normal for us. But what are your favorite aspects of a snowy world?
Besides the color, and especially like right now, the lighting, because the sun has come out. And so when you are covered in snow, when your surroundings are covered in snow and the sun comes out, like everything is so much brighter. Like the light is different. It's much more illuminating. So I like that aspect of it. I also like, I was telling the story the other day at work. I was saying that, I used to live in the mountains and we would have toys. And you would play with the toys, and then fall would come, and you'd leave some of your toys outside. And then that first snow would come, and as it built up, you would forget that you'd left your toys outside, and you would switch into your winter clothes and that whole thing. And then 6 months later, all the snow would melt, and suddenly these toys that you forgot you even had are now in your front yard. And it's like renewing those toys. Like you forgot about them, and then suddenly you have them again. So the snow can hide everything, and then once it all melts, it brings it back. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that perspective. I don't remember that.
I like sledding.
In fact, yes. In fact, when you were saying you used to live in the mountains, I was like, which time?
We did, it's been a long time, but I still remember living in the mountains.
Didn't you also live in the mountains for a brief time when you were working at a snow resort?
Yes, I lived in Sun Valley for a winter, for a season. Mostly out of necessity. At the time, the story that I gave was, I'm tired of working in all these warm climates, being on the ocean and scuba diving. I really miss the winter, so I got a job in Sun Valley, when the reality was, I can't remember what job I lost, or I feel like we got kicked out of a country.
I love that you may have gotten kicked out of a country and you're not sure.
I definitely was kicked out of a country. I can't remember if that's why we lived in Sun Valley. It was.
So what country did you get kicked out of, and why?
The British Virgin Islands. I had a job on an island called Joost van Dyke, which is it's a very small island. That's off of Tortola or Tortuga. I can't remember. This is the ridiculous thing about
You're traveling. Like Captain Jack Sparrow, and you've been to the Isle of Tortuga.
Or Tortola.
Or Tortola. We're not sure which.
I'm not.
Too much rum.
It's the ridiculous part of traveling so much. It's like when you go places accidentally. So there's a difference. If you're going to go somewhere on purpose, like you're going to go to Italy. So you buy like the Lonely Planet Italy book and you study like, oh, and I want to go here. And you learn some of the phrases and some key restaurants you want to go to in whatever town in Italy you're going to. And then you remember, so that sticks in your brain. But we were like, oh, I've got a job on Joost van Dyke. I don't even know where that is. So I accept the job first, and then I find out where it is and where I have to fly to get there. And so anyways, we were flying in and we had been offered a job, but we didn't have the job. And because it was in the British Virgin Islands, not Virgin, the British Virgin Islands, we needed a work permit to work there. But we couldn't get the work permit until we had a job. So it was a catch-22 thing. We were going there for work, but we couldn't say on our declaration form going through customs that we were there for work. So we had to say we were there for pleasure. Then we were going to go to our job, meet with a person, pass all of our physicals, get officially hired once we passed our physicals and medical tests. I had to poop in a cup.
No way.
Yeah.
They won't even let you do that in this country. They're like, I won't get into the specifics.
I mean, should they let you poop in a cup?
People wonder what I'm talking about.
They don't even let you poop in a cup in this country. That's what we're living under. So I had to poop in a cup. But so then all that passed, and so then we had to apply for our work permit. So we had to leave and go back to that customs agency. And it's so small, like the same woman, I remember her name. Her name was Miss Christina. When I came back around the second time, and on my declaration through customs, it said I was there for work. And she's like, 7 days ago you came here and you said you were for pleasure, and now you're saying you're for work. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? I was like, well, I was told to say I didn't know I was going to get a job, but while I was here on pleasure, I got offered a job. So like, well, I didn't know I was going to work. And she's like, you have 2 days to get out of the country.
Wow, Miss Christina has power.
Yes. She said if I wasn't out of the country in 2 days, she would take away my passport and be deported.
Wow.
Now, whether or not, I'm sure she could do that, but I think also she was mad that I lied to her. So I didn't want to be deported. So we had to like scramble and find plane tickets. And again, through the course, even like right now as I speak to you, I've never had any money ever.
Yeah.
Like never. My wallet has nothing in it ever. So I'm scrambling to get enough money to get like a plane ticket, not only out of where we're going, but like, well, I need to work somewhere. Yeah,
where are we going to go?
So we flew back to Seattle, and then like right before we left, we sent out these our CVs to Sun Valley because they were hiring for the season, and they hired us right away. So I think I landed in Seattle and then left again 2 days later and was suddenly in Sun Valley. I worked at a 5-star French restaurant. Now, you know me, but nobody else does. I don't have the skills or the temperament or the language to work at a 5-star French restaurant.
We share those truths.
It was a huge joke. It was a laugh. I was so bad at it.
Yeah.
The chef was so mean to me, rightfully so, because I had no idea what I was doing. He's trying to sell like $600 bottles of wine.
Jesus.
And yeah, I know. It was ridiculous. And the long story short of living in Sun Valley was that it was beautiful. And I only skied once because I not broke both my ankles, but something happened to all of my joints in my body where I couldn't move.
Oh yeah. Dude, that happened to me too once. That happened to you?
Yeah, for like a month and a half.
Oh, mine was only for 3 days.
No, and I still had to work. Like I was downing ibuprofen to be able to stand so I could walk to work and serve for 5 hours a day. I don't know what happened.
That's insane.
And then it went away, and it's never happened again.
They call it rheumatoid arthritis. But you have to test for it to see if you actually have it, and you have to have multiple flare-ups for it to, but that's what they told me. They're like, probably it's rheumatoid arthritis. And if you're lucky, it'll never flare up again, but it probably will. And it hasn't since, so.
I just knocked on wood because it was horrible.
Knock on wood, yeah. What I actually think is that it's most likely that we're both have a proclivity to autoimmune disorders, and that is basically a stress response when you're physically, mentally, spiritually stressed out, emotionally stressed out, and then you're also possibly eating foods that you're not really quite aware of normally that are a allergen to you. But then in moments like that, they're like a super allergen, and your body just starts attacking everything because it doesn't know what the hell is going on.
That would make sense. I mean, I usually, in general, say that it's not that I've never dealt with stress, but I often say like my life has been fairly stress-free for the most part, especially in my adult years. But if I really stop and think about it, like everything I've done was out of like, because I was losing a job, or like I was never like rooted in anything.
Yes.
So as much as like that maybe wasn't stress, like I think of other people being stressed out, like, oh, how am I going to pay my bills? And I have a mortgage, and like I never had any of those things, mortgages, or up until recently kids, or like that kind of responsibility. It's like I'm fancy free, I can go whatever I want. But there is a stress to like living in a different country all the time, from being away from your family for 5 years and being abroad. And as much as people can idealize that and fantasize and like, God, it'd be so nice to run away and go to, you know, live in Greece, which is that was my plan. My original plan was to not finish the last 15 credits of university.
And for people who haven't been to college yet or just never went, 15 credits you can do in 1 quarter.
Yeah, so you can do in 1 quarter. I went and I did 2 years at a community college, and then I went to the University of Washington. I was super close to graduating that, but then I transferred to the University of Oregon because I'm an idiot.
Oh, right. I forgot that. You're not that you're an idiot, just that you transferred.
Yeah, exactly. And which cost more money. And then while I was doing that, I remember clearly I was like in a psychology class because I was getting my degree in psychology, and I was looking out the window, and I saw this squirrel like run up this tree and then stop, and like it looked like it was playing around. It was probably like making sure that it was going to live that day.
Yeah.
But to me, it was frolicking. I was like, I don't want to be here. This is so ridiculous. What am I doing? Like, I'm going to become like, I couldn't see the end point of what I was doing. Like, it didn't seem logical. But what did seem logical was to drop out and fly to Greece.
Yes. No, I totally relate to that on a deep level. But what I love is that it was like spurred by this moment of total randomness, unplanned, you know, where you happen to like connect with nature in a way. And I like, obviously you're projecting onto it and like anthropomorphizing and whatever, but it still served its purpose to like, you know, show you yourself or whatever.
Yeah. And so, but it's interesting now looking back, because that was in 2003. And so I was like, I'm gonna drop out of school, because what do I need school for? Like, I'm not learning anything. I'm never gonna get a job in this. Like, I don't want to be a person who works at a job. I'm gonna go become a farmer. My plan was to become a farmer in Greece.
Wow. So like what made you choose farmer specifically in Greece specifically?
I think in my mind, a farmer is uneducated. You can just go do it. I don't think that's the reality, but I think that was like, I don't know. Honestly, there was no plan. Like, if I were to lay out my whole life from the time that I graduated high school, like from the year before I graduated high school until about 3 years ago, I never had a plan. I never thought about like, you know, there's a story about a grasshopper and I feel like the ants, maybe.
Oops, sorry.
The ants work all the time, and the grasshopper just sits around chewing tobacco and spitting. And he's like, "Why are you guys working so hard?" And the ants are like, "Well, you got to prepare for the future." And then winter comes, and the ants are all happy, and the grasshopper's like freezing. And in some stories, the grasshopper dies, and in other stories, the ants take care of the grasshopper. And I think the moral of the story is work hard, plan for the future, because you never know what's going to happen, and you may need to rely on the things that you've saved up. For a long time, I was that grasshopper.
But there was always enough ants around to make it okay.
Well, or there were enough grasshoppers that were doing the exact same thing as me, and we just kept, like, I never really, like, I wasn't mooching off of people, but I was just like, I was just following, I was just going with the flow. Like, I never, and I was with my ex-girlfriend, like, was very good at planning, and so therefore I never had to. Like when I decided I was going to become a farmer in Greece, I didn't even look up to see if, I mean, I assume there were farms in Greece, but it's not like it's not like I was going to a specific farm even. I was just going to fly, and then, I don't know, I guess meet a farmer at the airport that needed work at the exact same time that I got up. I was just going to live in this serendipitous environment. She was in law school. And so in my mind, I was like, well, she's never going to join this, so we're going to break up because she's going to finish law school and I'll do this. And she was like, sweet, because I want to get out too. So she planned, she's like, we'll go to Greece, we'll take a course, we'll learn how to teach English, and then we'll find a job somewhere on the planet teaching English. And so that's what we did. We spent a couple months in Crete, took a course to teach English, got certified to teach English, went to Turkey, and in Istanbul, like within 2 days, found a job in an apartment. And I was in Istanbul for 2 years. And then
one of the most beautiful and epically, historically rich cities in the world.
And in your introduction, when you said Byzantine, I was like, I live in a place where that is relatable.
True.
Yeah, and then every decision after that was just like, I don't want to teach I love teaching. I really connected with that, but I was in a classroom all the time, and I was getting tired of it. And I was getting burnt out being surrounded by like 15 million people.
Yeah, it's really
in
intense.
A city that's made for like 800,000. You know?
In a city where people's culture is to be really physically close to you all the time.
And
so you're like, not only are you like surrounded by people, but they're all touching you.
And yes, which culturally is weird. And also culturally, it's okay for them to tell you that you're getting fat or you look fatter.
You're like, shut up. That's not how we do it where I'm from.
Which took a while to get used to. You know, you'd go and like, they'd have Ramadan or something, so you wouldn't be in school for a week or something. And you'd come back after the week like, oh, it's so good to see you, Mr. Brown. Man, you've gotten fatter. You have fish face. Like, fish face? Like, yeah, fish face. You know, like, that's not nice.
But it's funny because it is actually a compliment to men. Yeah, you're supposed to get fat and happy. Like
they would judge you. They would judge your belly. They would call it like how many people could fit on your porch. Like, oh, you have a 1-person porch, but Byram over here, he's got a 5-person porch, and he's got this huge chest. Like, yeah, I guess it was a sign of like, well, at least you have food to eat, and you have idle time to sit around and stuff chocolates in your mouth. So
yeah, that's how you judge it.
But yeah, that was I would have stayed there longer. Like the apartment we had was great. The money was, for what I was doing, the money was really good until the dollar dropped, and then we lost like $2,000 in one day because of the stock market or something.
Was that from 9/11? No, that was way past.
No.
2008.
No, it was in between both those things. It was just something like the dollar was very volatile. I have no idea why, but we were getting paid in lira and then buying dollars. And when I say lose, that's not actually true. It's like if we would have bought dollars on Wednesday, we would have had $3,000. But because we bought on Thursday, we had $800.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't lose money. It's just that if we had done it the day before, we would have had a lot more money.
I mean, when you look at like how imaginary that whole system is anyway, you lost nothing. You just had enough to live.
Yeah, I still had the exact same amount. Mm-hmm. I say we lost money, but I didn't actually lose anything. But my working in Sun Valley was the same as anyway. It was just like, I have to work somewhere. They're hiring in Sun Valley. I have to work somewhere. They're hiring in, the Florida Keys, or they're hiring in the DR or whatever.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that you're just like, I'm gonna go to Greece or Italy or whatever, I'm gonna start farming, but you happen to be with somebody who's like planned it out for you and like made that path for you. But I kind of wonder, because a lot of people's method of I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people from time to time, their method of traveling is to just go and see where it leads them. And like, I wonder what would have been different if Christine hadn't been a planner and you had just kind of gone, and like what sort of weird worlds would have opened up. But at the same time, maybe it was a lot better. I don't know.
You never will either. Yeah. Because when I graduated high school, I did the exact same thing, except I actually finished first. I graduated high school, and my plan was always I didn't even apply to college, which made my counselor very upset.
Counselors are always sure of what your path should be, and
he called me out of class and sat me down, and he's like, "I've noticed you haven't applied to college. Which ones are you applying to?" I was like, "I'm not applying to any. I'm not going to go. At least right after I graduate, I might go someday." He's like, kids that don't go right away end up not going at all. I was like, well, that's fine with me. I'm just not going. I'm going to go to Europe instead. He's like, hold on. And he picked up the phone, he dialed the number, and he's like, hey, Bruce, I got a student here. I think at that point, my grade point average was like 3.3. Like 3.3 grade point average. He's taken this class and this class and this class. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. You're in at the university, or the Washington State University. Like, I don't want to go to
Washington. Yeah, thank you though.
Very nice of you. But when I graduated, my plan was to travel. I was going to travel for at least a year. and I bought a ticket into London because I figured I'd never been abroad before. So I figured like in London, they speak English. Like that would be the least culture shock place to fly in. And then 9 months later, my departing ticket was from Madrid. And I bought a Eurail pass and I was like, all right, so I have 9 months to get from London to Madrid. And so in my mind, and then I just kept it open. I was like, maybe I didn't have any places of where I was going to stay. I didn't have reservations for hostels or anything like that. I was just going to go wherever.
See, and that terrifies most people. What you're describing right now is just like, what the hell? What if it doesn't work out? But like, what sorts of amazing things happen to you because you left it open?
I understand why that would terrify people. I mean, I think like a lot of people can say like, oh, that's really brave, or oh, you have a really strong spirit. And other people, which is probably a little bit true as well, it's like, man, don't think things through at all.
Yeah, you're dumb.
You're a little naive. And I think it was part of it. I definitely romanticized the adventure of traveling around. And I had been reading like On the Road and stuff like that. So I had this I'm going to say I romanticized traveling and meeting people who were also traveling and like kind of forming that group and just kind of trusting that, you know, as long as you keep your wits about you, most things will be okay. And for the most part, that's 100% true. You keep your wits about you. You don't do something that you wouldn't normally do at your house. Like, you know, don't go sleep in the alley in Seattle at 4 o'clock in the morning and not expect for somebody to pee on you. You know, but be smart and you think things through, you'll generally be okay. So yeah, and that's where I went, and I spent more money than I needed to the first 2 nights because I just stayed in the first hostel I could find. And then we went kind of to the outskirts of London and I found a very cheap hostel and I stayed there, and there were people from all over. Like it was a little melting pot of people from Australia and Israel and France and Germany and Asian. There are people, I don't know exactly from Asia, Italy. Like there's just a huge group of people.
Cool.
And I ended up staying there like 8 months and 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
Like,
wait, so which brings you pretty close to your alleged departure date from Rome, right?
Yeah, from Madrid.
Madrid, sorry.
Yeah. So
totally
I left
country.
and I was teetering on it. I was teetering on even staying longer, like just letting my flight, just not being there for my flight and just relying on myself to either, because I worked a little bit, but I had also saved for 2 years for this trip. So my intention wasn't to work, but I did work here and there sometimes. I did construction for like 45 minutes one morning.
45 minutes one morning.
Yeah,
And then you're like, this is hard.
It wasn't even that. It was that I couldn't understand what anybody was saying because they were all Scottish.
Oh.
And I thought that they were making fun of me, and I think they probably were. I just was super embarrassed. So like, they were like walking around the site and pointing things out and telling me to do things. I kept saying like, I'm sorry, what? And then they'd get even more mad and they'd say it again. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, do you understand English?
Yeah, people don't really know until you've talked to like a real Scottish person that like they're speaking the same language as you technically.
Yeah.
You have I could not understand anyone.
The inflections are different. And I honestly think because I was 18 and I was this little 18-year-old American boy that they were taking the piss out of me.
Yeah.
So I was like, where's the bathroom around here? And they pointed in a direction and I went in that direction and I took a left and I just started running down the street in my steel-toed boots, just running away from the site. And,
that's so rad.
Yeah, I didn't get paid for that day.
No.
But yeah, I got up to the day before, well, honestly, 2 days before that flight was scheduled to leave Madrid. And I was like, I felt like I had this feeling that I should come home. I'd talked to you a little bit and I talked to Kendra, our other sister, a little bit. And mom had just moved into the house that she has now. And I don't know, I just had this feeling that I should come home. So I decided to come home. So they threw this, like the people that I lived with, we had eventually moved out of the hostel and we'd gotten a house. There was like 10 of us living in this 3-bedroom house.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, they threw one last goodbye party. I overslept my alarm and had to like run to the tube station to get to the train station. I barely got on my train. I took the train from London to Paris, And then I had another train from Paris to Madrid. And in my mind, the train from London to Paris was like right where the train from Paris to Madrid would be.
That would
across,
be my head too.
In fact, it was across town. So I had to run out, I had to catch a cab. And now this was before the euro. So I had a bunch of pounds. I didn't have any francs. I didn't think I would need francs, but I took this cab and it cost whatever it cost. And I was like, I don't have that, I have pounds. And the taxi driver was like, well, just give me those things. And I looked back on it and I paid him like $100 more than I needed to.
Oh my God.
Because I just didn't know what the conversion was because I was flustered and young and stupid.
Yes.
So, but anyways, I was at the train station and now I could take the train to Madrid. So I did that. And again, in my immature little mind, the airport is right next to the train station.
Yes, they all should just be where they are.
Yeah. My train pulled in with like 2 hours before my flight was leaving. So I was like, that's plenty of time. I'll get out of the train station. I'll check my stuff. I'll have 2 hours. That's no problem. So I got there and then, believe it or not, the airport is not next to the train station in Madrid. It's like 15 kilometers away. I didn't have, this is so ridiculous. I didn't have any money. I had no money at all. I had like change, like I had pound coins, but you can't change coins. You can only change bills.
Oh, right.
Because I needed I was going to say pesos. I don't know if that's true. I don't remember what the Spanish money was. But
just
anyways,
call it rupees. You're always safe with rupees.
So my first plan was, well, I'll change this changeover because I had like 10 pounds in coins, which is like $27 or something at the time. I was like, that has to be enough to take the taxi, but nobody would change it. So then I went to this taxi rank with like 7 taxis waiting for it by the train station. And I went to the first one and I was like, I need to get to the airport. And they're like, okay, that's no problem. I was like, I don't have any money. And the guy rolled up the window. And then I went to the one behind him. I was like, I need to get to the airport. He's like, okay, no problem. I was like, I have money, but it's this change from England. He's like, I can't do anything with that. And he rolled up his window. I went to the next one, the third one. I was like, I need to get to the airport. It's leaving in like an hour and 15 minutes now. I have this camera. I had a film camera that was probably worth $25.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Out of the 7 taxi cabs, it was like the 5th or 6th one. I got there and I was so dejected and I had like an hour left and it's like, I need to get to the airport. I don't have any money, but if you take me and give me your address, I promise that I will send you money when I get home. And that person said no. The very last one, I started walking up and he just said, get in, and he drove me. And I was explaining as we were driving and he's like, and I said, if you give me your address, I'm so sorry I don't have any money, but if you give me your address, I will send you money, I promise. I have money in my account. That was the other thing. I had money in my bank account, but my card wasn't working. So anyways.
Because you're in multiple countries in like one day. Yeah,
I was like zipping around and they're like, no, this isn't right. So he's taking me in there. It's like, I have a son that is your age, about your age. And I would hope that if he was in the same predicament as you in some other place in the world, a stranger would take kindness on him and help him. So you don't have to send me any more money. He not only took me to this is a taxi driver, took me to the airport without making me pay, gave me like $20 so I could buy food at the airport. And I got there, like, seriously, like I had 20 minutes from the time he dropped me off to get to the counter to check all my stuff. This was before security was what it was. So like if you were 20 minutes away now, there's no way you would.
There's no way.
I barely make it. Like that 24-hour period of time from like the farewell party to being ripped off in Paris to getting a free ride. Like I got ripped off by one taxi driver and then a free ride from another taxi driver.
Oh, see, the universe balanced that out for you.
Yeah, I overpaid one. I definitely underpaid the other. So yeah, but that's just like all of it just seems like my goal in life now is not to plan everything, but at least have a plan and maybe a backup plan. Because I don't know how long you can just kind of free ball it until
your luck runs out.
Until everything just collapses. And you're like, I wonder why I don't have anything.
But man, I'm like, I feel like the opposite experience happens too, where you do plan everything out and you still find yourself in a situation where you desperately need that one taxi driver to just like see the humanity, that's common and like to help you out without getting gain from it. Because I've also been in a random parts of the world and like lost, and we did plan everything and it was all supposed to go according to plan, and then it doesn't. But
Well,
like
that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? It's like you can over plan so much that if something doesn't go right, it throws your whole thing off kilter, and then you don't know. So it's like everything else. There has to be like, there has to be a balance. Like, I say this for everything. This is becoming a reoccurring phrase of mine over the last couple of years, but there needs to be balance. Like if you go to any kind of extreme in anything in your life, throw in whatever topic you want into that sentence. If you go to an extreme, it's probably not going to be beneficial, and it's going to be more negative for you. But if you can kind of find that middle ground where, in this scenario, like, have an idea of what you're doing, but also be open, if it doesn't work out, or, because you don't want to be like, oh, I need to get straight A's and I need to get into this school and I need to do this and I need to do this, because if something goes wrong, you like have a mental breakdown and your whole life falls apart.
Right.
But you also don't just want to sit around and be like, I'll be fine. Like,
whatever happens.
I've got friends. My friends have money. Like, whatever.
True.
I can always call my mom for money when I'm 46 years old.
Hey, massive amounts of people do it. I knew a guy who was like, I didn't know him. Actually, he was like a friend of a friend, but like he was like 50, living in his mom's basement, playing video games all day. And I was like, that's a bit much. Like, I feel like we have this thing in our culture where we look down on people for like moving back in with their parents ever, but I've done it. A few times. You've done a few, and we're both successful people who have been very capable and able of making our lives to a large extent what we want them to be. But like, there's just times where that you need that, and that's what family's for. And so you're lucky to have it. But like, I don't get why we demonize it,
Right. Well, and I think, there's a point, like, exactly. You want family, and now that I have a son, like, he's
the cutest in the world.
It's the most adorable thing on the planet. But having family around is important. Like, it's a safety net in more than a monetary sense. Like, you get emotional support, you get assistance in just living, like having somebody that can watch him if Allegra and I want to go out and have date night or something. But if something happens and you need to fall back and move in with your parents, and that's something that's possible, that's great. If you take advantage of that and you're just like, well, my parents are paying for rent, so I can, just slouch around and do nothing. That's obviously, you don't want to take advantage of the situation, but you want to have those resources for you should you need them.
Yeah, that's that perfect balance like we're talking about between like knowing everything that's going to happen, figuring it all out, and kind of letting things take their course as they would.
And you would hope that there should be a part of you, like, in the back of your mind, like, if anything happens, I can fall back and I can, live with my parents again to regroup myself. But I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to try my best not to let that happen. But if the worst is the worst, then at least that's there.
Right.
So that's like having that safety net that you don't want to hit, or having that like money that you've tucked away that you don't absolutely want to touch. But if you need to, you can. And that's where I'm starting to kind of, that when I say plan, and like I'm becoming an adult, like 2018 and 19 is like the year of Brandt becoming an adult.
Yeah.
I've gotten what I consider a proper job. Not proper, real. I have a real job now that like pays money on a regular basis, that provides like a retirement plan, that provides like health insurance,
paid time off.
I want to buy a house or property in the next couple of years, like things that you've been doing for the last 20 years. Like, I want to start doing that now. Which
is funny because I've had a little bit of adventure tucked in here and there, but I'm about to like go on my sort of open-ended adventure, and
so that's a synchronous. Like we're just kind of
swap places here.
And the great thing about that, though, is that I want that. Like, I look at it like I've done it. I've traveled, and I've met people from all over the world, and I've met amazing people, and I've met horrible people, and some beautiful things have happened to me, and some awful things have happened to me, and I appreciate all of that, and now I want to just like root and have my family and work 40 hours a week, and I think I feel very blessed in that sense that, like, I know a lot of people start early, and then by the time they're my age are like burnt out and like having their midlife crisis and like, why did I do this? And you get divorced and cheat and all these other things, like, oh, I never really got to live. which I think is kind of a myth anyways. But I just feel like I'm never gonna sit there and have that wanderlust of being like, oh, what if I could go to Greece and be a farmer?
Yeah, because you tried that and
I tried.
Yeah.
And generally everything, all of the experiences I had with that worked out, but that's not something that if I can live the rest of my life without having to fly ever again, I'd be pretty pleased.
Dude, I am with you. Like, the terror of air travel is horrendous. I hate it. I got on the plane last time I was on the plane and like sat down, literally just walked on and sat down, and I was like, it already smells like farts in here. Like, it's disgusting.
It's just, flying is fine. Like, I don't mind being in an airplane. I like looking out the windows, but it got like, I was flying so much that I didn't even care if the window was open. All I really cared about is that I had one place to put one elbow, because you're never going to get both. So you can like at least hopefully get one. And nobody would sneeze in my face. And it's getting to the airport. It's being in the airport. It's waiting to get onto your plane. It's waiting for everybody else to get onto the plane. It's waiting for people to get off the stupid plane.
Just get off the plane.
It takes 45 minutes. Like, just get up and stand up and walk.
Okay, but you were in Turkey. Did you ever took flights in Turkey? Like, you get off like 3 different exits. Everybody just gets on. As soon as you land, people stand up and start getting their bags down. And it's like, yes, let's be more like Turkey.
You have 4 doors on this plane. Let's use all of them.
Let's all get off right now. We like file out one by one, and everyone slowly gets their bag. And like,
I know. It's like, this row, stand up, and now move to the center aisle, and now get your bags, and now say goodbye. You have to say goodbye. Thank you guys for letting me sit on your little fart tube and flying me 5,000 miles. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Giving me that little bag of crackers.
Yeah, that really satiated my appetite.
Totally.
This is a normal meal I would have.
So this is
an hour period of time.
This is random, but what I realized, because our my friend Shauna, who you also know, obviously, is a chef. She told me that airplane food is some of the like highest in sodium, because when you're that high up for whatever reason, or maybe it's something about the pressurization, I don't know, but your taste buds and your sense of smell actually like are dampened, and so they have to flavor the food like 5 times as much just so you can taste it. Like, that's disgusting. So you're eating like the grossest food ever.
So, I don't know what it's called, but there's a thing famously a couple years ago, like a famous news anchor's husband died of, it's like a blood clot you get when you sit too long. Like, he was sitting on a plane and he got a blood clot and he ended up dying, which is unfortunate. But I wonder if that would add to it. Like, if you are eating like a lot of sodium and because they're saying your veins start restricting when you're flying in pressurized areas anyways. I don't know. So
it's actually just like a little death trap for people who are have any sort of proclivity to clotting or sodium sensitivity.
Well, and it's just the whole idea of flying. Like, I get it from an airline point of view. Like, you want to make the most money possible that you can. So you use every square centimeter of that plane to fit a person into. This is no joke. I heard, and I believe, I'm not going to get the country right, but it was somewhere in Asia, maybe Japan or China, but somewhere in Asia, we're talking about trying to develop a 737 that you could stand in like a subway car, because you could fit in like 3 times as many people if you didn't have any seats or any of those things. You would just
my God,
just be standing there on a thing like, all right. What a nightmare that would be.
It's like the Gravitron, but
stuck against it for a while. And
oh my God. I never want to fly again. But ironically, now you are building planes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's first tell people about, because I think you said like, now I finally have a real job, but one of my favorite jobs that you've ever had was down in the DR. So tell people about that job and then how you got from that job to where you are now.
Okay. Yeah. So just real quickly, after I was teaching English, I decided I wanted to work outside. So I looked online, and we found scuba diving, like being a scuba dive instructor or being a safari guide in South Africa.
Those are like the 2 options of how to work outside and travel.
The whole planet. Those are the only 2 things you could do.
But had you ever scuba dived before that?
No.
Okay.
No. But I had also never safari guided before. No, we solely chose those two just because if you had certification in those things, you could travel to other countries and work. And both were about 9-month courses, both cost about the same. So we, in all honesty, flipped a coin and it came up heads, and heads was Thailand. So we went to Thailand.
Literally? That's how you chose?
Yeah, if it would have come up tails, I would have been a safari guide and done that instead.
That's crazy. I didn't never know
because
that.
I wasn't really attached to it because I had never scuba dived before. So it's not like I was like, oh, I mean, it always sounded interesting, but it wasn't something that I was passionate about. So we saved up money and we went to Thailand and spent 9 months becoming a scuba dive instructor. And the first boat that I worked on was in the Bahamas, and a guy chartered that boat from January to April, and he would take it to the DR, and then from the DR, every week we'd go out to the Silver Bank, which is on the northeast part of the island. It's about 90 miles away, and it's where the North Atlantic humpback whales congregate to mate and to give birth. You know, up in the other months of the year, they're up in the north eating, and then they, you know, do that and get all their weight up, and then they come back down every year. So for that 3-month period of time, he's been doing this now, I think is his 28th or 29th year. Wow. Because they're out there right now. And he's helped regulate the area and make it a sanctuary so that, you know, they don't fish during that period of time. So that's the first, so I met him through that job. I worked for the boat at the time, but we'd go out and we would take people to have soft in-water encounters with whales and get in the water and mask fin and snorkel and let the whales approach you, and which they generally do. And I did that for a couple of years working for the boat, and then I went off and did some other things. And then when I wanted to work on boats again, I found a boat. He was chartering a different boat, so I applied to that boat, worked for that boat. He came later in the year. We went back to the Silver Bank, and then after that, I just asked if I could work specifically with him. So in total, I did it for 10 years. It wasn't 10 years consecutively, but for a 10-year part of my life, I would spend 3 months in the Dominican Republic, mostly as the scout, which is the in-water guide that gets in the water. You look down at the whale, like you position yourself over the whale and make sure that it's behaving in a way that is suitable to have other people in. And then they would get into the water and swim up to you, and you would just, and you've done it. You just sit there and you float over the whale and let it come up to breathe to you. And if it has a calf, that's even better, because then the calf will kind of play in front of you. And yeah, it's a job that I had no idea even existed. I don't know if a lot of people know that it exists.
I don't know that a lot of people even know you can go do that, let alone possibly have a job doing it. You know, like, I don't even know if people realize they can find a way to go swim with,
like, on their recreational time, like, oh, for my vacation, I'm going to go down and swim with whales.
Right.
Yeah, it's like only 600 people a year can do it, which seems very exclusive, but at the same time, it's a very possible thing to do. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's not something you're like, well, only 6 people or 600 people a year do it. So you'd be like, oh, well, it must be like $10,000. That's like half that.
It is. And it's like, it's not what people might imagine, where it's this like super luxurious boat. Like, it's a pretty normal boat, you know, it's pretty standard, like, rooms. It's not super fancy or anything. And the people who were there when I went with you actually ended up being very, I guess, humble, normal people, you know, but I am sure that you've had experiences where you didn't necessarily have that type of clientele.
For the most part, the person that's going to leave their home country to go to a foreign country to get into the middle of the ocean, and you're in the middle of the ocean. Like, there's no land around you. For the closest land is 90 miles away.
It took us how many hours to get out to that?
It takes about 10 hours to get out.
10 hours driving away from shore into the ocean.
Yeah, straight into oncoming waves. I can't remember your trip, if it was super rough or not, because generally it is very rough. Very rarely is it smooth. And sometimes
I was very lucky, and I don't remember if it was rough or not, because I just slept through that entire 10-hour journey.
Okay, so you didn't get like seasick or?
No, I was very lucky. Well, I think you told me that I should take that medicine that people take. Dramamine, like, once right away, even if I didn't feel sick, and sleep with it and get used to the motion, and then I would be wake up and feel fine. And I did do that, and I never had to take Dramamine again. And I never got seasick for that whole, was it 7 days, 5 days?
the trip is 7 days, but the actual time on the boat out in the ocean is 5.
5. So yeah.
And then you have a day going out and a day coming back.
Okay, so the 7 days I never got sick once, whereas our sister did not follow that advice and did get very sick multiple times.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I felt bad for her. And then there was somebody else on your boat. I obviously can't remember her name, but she didn't come out a couple times because she wasn't feeling well.
Oh, right.
Also.
Yeah. So it's common that people might not adapt well to their sea legs or whatever.
Right. And once you get out there, it's generally like you're moored up in the same place. So the boat, the big boat, I mean, you're on the ocean, so you're always moving.
Yeah.
But when you get onto the smaller boats, you're moving a lot more. Most people can handle it. Some people, like our sister, unfortunately, like she got hit pretty hard with motion sickness.
Yeah, and she kind of knew she might because she gets car sick and stuff. But yeah, it was pretty easy for me to adapt to it, which was lucky. And I think like it's hard to even describe to people how amazing it is when you finally get out there and you're in the little boat and you go out and there's a whale that approaches you and you get to get in the water in the ocean. You know, and like you're lucky because you can see the bottom because that reef, the silverbank, right, comes up to kind of meet you. And so it's, what is it, like 80 feet away generally?
On average, yeah.
So, you know, you can see like that there's some sort of a floor there, which for me made me feel a lot better, or like that there's a coral reef over there. And like, so you have some surroundings, but you still can never explain to anyone that this massive creature is sitting like right there. And you know, you can talk
an animal that
yes, and you can talk about the length of it and the heft of it and like how giant they are, but you really can't understand it until you're looking at it in its eye. That's
you're 100% correct. It's the hardest part, and I'm so thankful that like before I had to stop working there, that you and that my family was able to come out, my wife was able to come out the year before you guys did. So all the people that are closest to me were able to experience, because I can show pictures and I can show video. And last year I did a talk at the local library. I did a presentation on it, and people are always very interested, but there's no way to convey the reaction your body has.
Yeah.
When an animal like that comes up to you and its eye, which is like this big,
yes,
like just stares at you. Or like when a calf comes up to you and plays and like turns and is choosing to interact with you.
Yeah.
They're not moving away from you. Some do, but the ones that choose, they choose to interact with you. They choose to spend time with you. And then when they're done, they're like, okay, now we're gonna go. And then they go do something else. And it's like, it would be like standing out in the forest and just being there, and then like a bear walks up to you and just like stares you in the eye and like inquisitively looks at you for a while, and the bear just walks away. And you're like, what?
Yeah, totally.
Why would you do that? Why do they even care? And they do, and they come back. I mean, they go there regardless of whether or not we're there.
Right.
But there are some that were calves when I was first there that were on like their second calf of their own by the time that I left.
Wow.
And
you have to see families like grow up.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've had times where we were in our boat with a mother and a calf, and the mother and calf were interacting with us, and you could see from the distance another mother and calf coming in, pushing that mother and calf away, and the mom would just stop and like nap underneath the boat, and the calf would play with us. And they're like,
it's my turn.
I know this boat. They're going to watch my calf. I'm going to be able to get some rest. And like, yeah, they just changed out. Like, all right.
Do you, well, let's go beyond the like realm of what you can know, but do you think it's possible that any of them recognized you as a person, or do you think they just recognize the experience as like, that's that boat thing, or that's that thing that my kid can play with for a little while I sleep? Or do you think they were like, maybe looked at you and were like, that's that guy?
Right. If I'm being honest, how acoustic they are, I 100% believe that they can differentiate one boat from another boat. I've physically seen, I have seen, because we're not the only operator out there. There's two other operators. I've seen another boat like chase a whale all morning long. When I say chase, I mean like the whale definitely wasn't stopping. Like that whale did not want to interact, but they have their guests on and they need to make their guests happy. So like, there it is. And oh, it's coming up for another blow. And I'm sure they're not saying like, oh, we're going to chase this whale.
Yeah.
But from the way that we operate, like they're chasing that whale. Like
Yeah.
we would have let that whale go 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
They've been chasing it around for 4 hours. And then after lunch, that same whale, you know, finding it, like getting out there first and finding it. And I think it can tell the difference in the engine sounds, and it just calms down because it knows that we'll interact with it while it's there. And then when it goes to leave, we're going to let it leave.
Oh.
And we've been doing that. Like the guy I've been working with has been doing that for almost 3 decades. So I believe that they can tell the difference between that.
Yes.
A step farther, I think that they can feel the vibrations, if not from like the energy of your body, especially when you have a group of people there,
yes.
but like your heartbeats. Like I think they can tell when people are nervous and when people are overly excited. And I think when you get a group of people that are respectful and calm, you have a much better interaction. There's a girl, not a girl, she's a woman, who comes on every year. She stays for a couple weeks at a time. Became really close friends with her. She bought a really neat present for Justice. We had a meeting with a fairy godmother who did like a astral reading for him, which is interesting.
Oh, I would.
She's
totally
really cool. And she considers herself in tune with nature. She doesn't call herself an animal communicator, but she says she feels their energy, and she
doesn't want to put that like kind of woo-woo like label on it, but she.
Because once you do, people will generally like cut you off, like, oh, okay, well you're a crazy person,
right?
But she's like, no, I just feel the energy. But to me, she's like, yeah, this. So we would sit on the boat sometime, and like, you know, if I wasn't driving, if somebody else was driving, and we were like just kind of searching around, and we would look and kind of guess which whales would interact and which ones weren't. That being said, the best experiences I've ever had in the water with a whale were when she was there.
Wow.
I think because of the energy she brought, because of the way that she could feel the whale, how calm she was and how respectful she was. And I think the whales could feel that as well. So you know, if you think about an animal that just logistically can sit at the bottom of the ocean and sing, and that song can be heard up to 50 or 60 or 70 miles away, obviously way beyond what we can hear.
Yeah.
I have no reason to believe that it couldn't hear the beating heart of 10 human beings 10 feet away.
Right.
You know, if it can hear something that's, you know, so far away.
Right.
So that's a long way of me saying, yes, I do. I think not only they can differentiate us from our engines, but I think they can differentiate us from our sound. Not necessarily like if I wear the same shorts every year, they're like, oh, there's that guy with the, you know, red shorts.
Right.
But I think they're like, okay, I can hear, like, this is a familiar feeling.
Right.
I think they're way more intuitive on that.
The combination of wavelengths your body is producing at it can like understand that in some way. And
that's obviously not anything that's ever been even, it's not only it's never been proven, it's I doubt it's been studied.
Right.
Like the amount, and I don't know how you really would actually like study what vibrations a whale can pick up and interpret. But it's a feeling. It's a feeling that I've gotten. And, you know, it's very possible that I could be wrong. But again, through my experience in 10 years, and not to brag, but very few people on the planet. I mean, whale experts don't have that much experience being in the water with whales.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's worth more to me than someone who studied a bunch of textbooks and videos and whatever, is someone who spent the actual time interacting with these animals.
And one of the neat things is that we've had people that were with the group, the company is called Aquatic Adventures. Like if you were going to do this, I would do it through that company.
That's who you would look for. I would say so too, even by people's descriptions of different types of ways of going to interact with whales. Aquatic Adventures is definitely the most conscientious and respectful.
Yeah. And just they have the experience, and the guy who does it cares about what he's. I mean, they all probably care to a degree, but it's just I've seen his method. I've seen it work. It's the least intrusive. It's the most respectful, and it's not the most expensive either, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. It's very fair, very fairly priced.
Right. Right. But like. So Aquatic Adventures works very close. I kind of lost my train of thought, but Aquatic Adventures works very closely with the Center for Coastal Studies, which is up in Provincetown on Cape Cod, which we actually went to for a couple of days. I got certified. I'm a certified whale disentangler.
You're certified and have expertise in so many areas. It's crazy. You can
so
teach
many
English,
useful
foreign language, swim with whales.
Yeah, I can disentangle them.
Should you have your scuba certification. Aren't you a scuba dive master?
I'm higher than that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So there's a dive master, which sounds very important, but the scuba instructor is actually higher than a dive master.
Oh, okay. So
I like the name dive master more because it sounds badass.
Yeah, they need to swap those around.
I know. It's ridiculous. It's bad marketing.
And then you have your captain's license. You basically have a degree in psychology. I mean, realistically.
I'm like 15 credits away from it.
And what are those credits really going to do?
And make me more aware of psychology.
And now you build airplanes.
And now I build airplanes.
But you were saying that
pretty incredible.
You guys, Aquatic Adventures, works closely with the Coastal Studies.
Yeah, the Center for Coastal Studies. Anyways, I'm saying that because we've been able to have like people who study whales as their profession come down and get into the water because they never get to see. They see like when a humpback comes up, they see the dorsal fin come up, and sometimes they see the tail. Okay. Every once in a while, they'll see like a fin, but they've never seen like the actual entirety of the animal. So they can come down, get in the water and see it. And they say the same thing. They're like, I mean, this is not, I've studied these animals for 25 years and I've never actually seen it. It's hard to put it into words, you know, like trying to quantify what it is that you're actually doing.
So not only that, so you've had all this experience like interacting with them and snorkeling and taking people out, but you've also had some amazing encounters with whales. What are some of your favorites?
So there's a behavior that they do that we've termed dancing. And our belief is that, and it's exactly like it sounds. You have a male and a female, and they're interacting with a way that's it's purposeful. And it looks like kind of a underwater ballet. They're moving in these significant ways. They'll both like reach the surface, like softly breach the surface and then sink back down, or, you know, they'll do all these dancing movements. So anytime, I mean, people have been coming out for 10 years in a row trying to get a dancer and they still haven't gotten one.
Oh, wow.
It happens maybe once or twice a year. So whenever it happens, like it's super special. But a couple of years ago, and again, this woman that I was telling you about, she was there as well. I went to go check the mooring of the boat because the wind had been picking up, and you know, you just want to make sure that it's in a place where it's not going to snap apart and we're going to float away in the middle of the night. So we'd come back for the afternoon early. I put on my dive gear, and she's a very, very experienced diver. She's experienced on rebreathers. She does a lot of cave diving.
Oh, wow.
A couple of years ago, she helped bring like the remains of a 10,000-year-old girl from Mexico out of this cave system, which was like this huge big finding. It was in the cover of it's actually on the cover of the Seattle Times.
Oh my God.
And other newspapers. But anyway, the point being is that she's very experienced.
Yeah.
So she came with me just to dive. And so if you can kind of imagine, we're in 90 feet of water and there's these like coral pillars that come out of the bottom. And the one that we tie up to, our permanent mooring, is on one that goes from like the bottom of 90 feet, and the top is probably 60 feet underwater. No, 60 feet high, 40 feet underwater. And so that way the boat can be tied onto it, and if the wind changes, the boat can move around, but it's never going to scrape over anything. It's fairly protected. So the point is to swim up to the line that we're tied to, check that, and then go down to 60 feet or whatever, 70 feet, and check the chain that we're wrapped through and just make sure everything's secure.
Is it visible down there at this time? Like,
well, the sun was starting to go down, but there was enough light. I mean, I probably had 60 feet of visibility.
Okay.
Which is pretty good out there. It's not like, if you're trying to picture what this is like, it's not like the Bahamas where you can see like 1,000 feet. There's nutrients in the water and stuff like that. It's a little bit murky, but it's fairly clear. Anyways. So I was checking it, and I heard her giggle behind me underwater, and I turned to see what she was laughing at, and I didn't see anything. And when I turned back, like a whale was like 10 feet from me, just like swam right underneath me, to the point where I actually screamed a little bit because I was startled. I had my regular, I was like, woo! And then I stopped and I looked, and there were 3 whales, 1 female and 2 adults, and all 3 of them were dancing. And which I had seen on the, I'd never seen 3, I'd only seen 2, and it had only been on the surface. So I was underwater with them. The female would come up to us and like, I can do this. Like, this is me being vertical, you know, here are my fins, here's my head. And she would swim up and she would stop, and then she would kind of turn like this. So then I started turning with her, and then she went like this. And so I like started mimicking her movements while males were swimming around, dancing around us at the same time.
Wow.
We stayed in the water for like an hour. Well, she actually ran out of air and had to go to, like, she ran out 100% of air and had to go to the surface. And I stayed like another 10 minutes, just like dancing with these 3 whales. The sucky part is that the weather was so bad on the surface. That's why the boats came in. So all the guests were on the boat, and, you know, the captain had noticed that these whales were popping out at the bow of the boat doing this dancing motion. So all of the guests were out like watching this and seeing my bubbles and her bubbles coming up. I'm like, sweet. So Brandt and Susan are down there dancing with these whales, and
we're up here.
We're up here, and we have to watch. You know, but it was a very special, like, again, I'm sure that happens. I'm sure it happens randomly. Like, you can be in Hawaii and whales can come up to you, but like, again, I just I associated it with the person that I was with. And it's just like, those things happened when we were, you know, when she was on the boat, we would have encounters like that. So yeah, I got to dance with 3 whales for an hour. That's
pretty amazing.
Probably.
It's like
that, and then just being in the water with a whale that is singing. It's kind of, because you can, it's like your lungs collapse a little bit. Like, the vibration is so strong and intense that it stops you short from breathing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You like physically feel their song.
Oh, 100%. Like there's no doubt. You can hear it outside of the water. And then if you can actually find it, it's not always easy to find them, because they'll go down and they'll sing for like 20 minutes or something. But if you can get like right above them, because they're generally, like, if this is the head and this is the tail, they're generally pointed down, kind of singing at the bottom. And I guess the thought is that they echo it off the bottom, and then it can travel farther. Although I've been in the water with whales that have been singing as they've been moving around. We call them one-man bands. Just keep traveling around and traveling around. But yeah, you can definitely feel it. It's pretty intense.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I got to hear a little bit when you guys found like a song and put some sort of device down in the water, and we were able to kind of hear it, and it was incredible. But I can't imagine like actually being in the song. And
almost like anytime when you're out there, like if you could free dive down like 10 or 15 feet, you can always hear something. I mean, even the whales that aren't singing, are like verbalizing in some way.
Yeah. So that's what I noticed.
Or something.
I was like, I feel like I can hear them talking, or just, I don't know what
there was a mother and calf that you and I and that group we were in the water with, and the calf was squeaking and the mom was replying.
Oh, it's so cute.
It was one of the experiences we were doing a flyby where she was just kind of moving very slowly. So we'd kind of get up in front and she would swim very slowly by us. And then there was that jerk that was in the group that kept swimming in front of them. And
seriously, that drove me insane, because I was like, I'm like you. I feel like they can feel your energy, and they can feel your kind of how tense you are or whatever. And he was like always about like, I need to get up in their face and get a better picture for my video or whatever. And his video had very good intentions. Like, he wanted to help people, educate people about the whales and protect the whales. And so I can't hate on him too much, but I was also like, I think you're scaring them off, bro. Like, well,
and you paid to be there.
Yeah.
You know? So like, there needs to be a balance of like, I understand that this is for a good purpose, but I also paid for an experience.
Yeah.
And and honestly, and I kept trying to tell him this, is like, you're going to get a better shot if you just stay. And like, like sometimes I would pull you close to me. I was like, let's just stay here, because because you can tell, I can tell where they're going to go. And I would tell him, I was like, just be on this side of me and it's going to be fine. But instead he'd do like go way far out and
swim towards them.
But anyways, that mother and calf were kind of clicking and verbalizing to each other.
Yeah. I would remember really, I mean, I can't, even at the time, it was like too much for me to process. And I would sometimes feel like I was just going to start crying. And other times I would laugh. And I was like, and now I think back and like, I have a hard time verbalizing it. Like I hope that more people decide to go do something like that. And in that way, because I think you can go to places in California and you can go out and they, you know, you can even like touch them or whatever. But I feel like
the gray whale.
But I feel like it's a more personal experience when they're choosing to come up to you and just chilling with you, and like you have an actual interaction. I feel like,
right.
You know.
Yeah. Well, and you're in their environment and you're in their domain. And the nice thing about, the nice thing about Tom, that he owns Aquatic Adventures, the nice thing about Tom helping to make that a marine sanctuary is that there can only be a certain amount of boats. There can only be a certain amount of people. Like that, the point is not to exploit it,
right?
Which would be very easy to do. You
know,
like it. And so he had the foresight, 25 years ago to put those in action so that at least, because anytime you involve yourself in anything that's considered natural, people are going to say, well, like now you're changing the ecosystem, now you're changing the environment. And that's debatable. I mean, what is natural and what is, aren't we all natural? Like,
right. But like but his ability to go in and make that protected area and have only so many people and only so many boats a year has actually protected that. Like you're saying, like maybe you could say like, oh, it's bad because people are going there and that's where they're having their babies and whatever. But it's like, if he didn't do that, then maybe there'd be massive amounts of people and they wouldn't even probably come there anymore because it wouldn't be as safe.
Well, he was the first person to do it. Like for a long time, the government wouldn't, there's like, you can't do that. You can't put people in the water with whales, or people are going to die. Like you're putting people in danger because you don't look. And I guess that I can understand, like from a point of view, there's something that you don't know. There's a huge, it's like when people talk about sharks. And there was just a video a couple of weeks ago of a woman, I believe in Hawaii, although I might be wrong, but she was in a mask fin and snorkels, and a great white shark came up and she's swimming alongside it and she's petting it, and the great white shark is just super cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so it goes against everything that you've been told about sharks, like that a great white shark is a killer and it's going to eat your face off. And in general, yes, people do get bit by sharks, but people get bit by dogs way more than they get bit by sharks. Like,
true. Fair point.
Probably more people die from shark bites, so there's that. But it's like, if you put yourself in another animal's habitat, there is a possibility of something happening. So that unknown is, I can see a government saying like, that's crazy, we're not going to do that. But then he had people come out and see like how it was run. Like, oh, well, this isn't what I thought. I had imagined this one thing, but the reality is very different. Yeah. But the other smart thing about him creating that sanctuary and having to get permits is that not only it doesn't get overused, but like it stops the government from allowing, like just trying to, oh, we can make so much money doing this now. Like we used to be against it, but now we can profit from it. So we're going to sell 10 permits. It's still a sanctuary, but we're going to sell 10 permits. In the writing, they can't change the number. It's either you get 3 permits or you get 0 permits. You can't change it to 4. You can't change it to 6.
That's cool.
Yeah. So he had the foresight of like looking ahead and saying, we need to make this a solid number, because once they see how successful it's going to be, they're going to try to make money off of it. And then it'll be, a madhouse.
See, he's like a hero of the next 7 generations for the people and for the whales.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another reason why a lot of people like to go with his company, because of his experience and what he's like. There are people who do consider themselves animal communicators and people that are in tune with nature that look up to him in that way, like that he's done this very noble thing, which is cool.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So how do you get from snorkeling and scuba diving with humpback whales in the Dominican Republic to living just a normal everyday life of a 40-hour work week?
I was going to say it was hard, but it actually was very easy. So in the 10 years that I've been doing this, I want to get this number right, like at least 4 of those years, I was with Allegra, my wife. So every year I leave in January and I come back in April and do this amazing thing, but I'm gone for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And every year that got harder to do. It got harder to leave. The weeks building up before me leaving, I'd get like kind of internally tense and I'd want everything to be cool, but that you're leaving. And and I always felt a little bit guilty about leaving because we live in such a remote area, and you know, like especially now where we're covered in snowmageddon apparently. So just I would feel guilt about that, but it was a good source of money and it was a good opportunity, and she was never really that upset about it. So I kept doing it until she got pregnant last year. And then that's when I started talking about, well, then this is probably going to be the last year, because I don't think I'm going to be able to leave if we have a child.
Right.
And then once my son was born, and I was like, this, and I was like, no, I'm going to be gone as little amount of time as I possibly can. So then I was like, but I don't, all of these things that I've done in my life, again, that you pointed out, I can't really translate them into something viable where I am now. Like, yes, I could go teach English in Istanbul, but I can't really teach English here, at least not in a way that would be sustainable monetarily. I'm a boat captain, but I can't do that here. You need specific experience in Puget Sound in order to do that. So like, there's doors of opportunity, but there was nothing that I could immediately transfer all of my skills into something right away. And then my best friend's, her husband just sent me a text one day. He's like, hey man, I don't know if you're interested, but Boeing is doing a mass hiring. And I was like, I wasn't interested, in fact, but I applied anyways. I was like, it doesn't hurt. And then I got a call for an interview. And even the day of the interview, I was getting ready, and the clothes were like dress business casual, which I had to like Google what that meant because I don't know what that means.
Totally.
And if I even have those clothes.
I'm like, is that just a skirt, or like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I've just been a bum for like 15 years. And so I did Google it, and I did have the appropriate clothes, but I was getting dressed, and I was talking, and I was like, I turned to Allegra and said, what am I even doing? This is so stupid. Like, I'm not going to work at Boeing. They're not going to hire me. Like, is that what I want to do? I'm just going to, I work at Boeing now. Like, it just seemed like such an absurd thing in my mind.
So different. And
she said, well, just go to the interview, and, you know, if nothing else, it'll be an experience. It'll be, you know, you can build on it. You can learn how the interview process is and all that stuff. So it's like, fine. I begrudgingly went, and I went to this stupid interview, and I sat there and I waited my turn, and I talked to these two guys, and they're like, so why do you want to work in the wire? I got an interview to work in the wire shop, which does all electrical wires for every plane.
And you have no electrical background or anything.
So yeah, their first question was, why do you want to work in the wire shop? Or why do you want to make wire bundles? And I was like, I don't even know what that is, honestly. I just applied for a job. What is making a wire bundle? Like, so I had to
radical honesty. Like, I don't know what this is.
Why do you want to work here? I need money. Well, why do you want to be a wire bundler? I don't even know what a wire bundler is.
Yeah.
You know, so I was 100% honest, which I think they liked. And they said, they're like, you know, even if you knew how to build a plane by yourself, we would still train you how we want you to build a plane.
So there's nothing, yeah. Yeah.
So I left that, and I was like, you know, if I get it, that's good. If not, I don't. I got notified like within 2 days that I got it. And so I went to, they have an orientation in downtown Seattle, and they provide like breakfast for you, and it's all nice and fancy, and there's like 200 people. And they started, this is me. Like, I get this offer for a job, and I accept it. I didn't spend any time at all researching what that job was, what Boeing did, how much they paid, where I would be working. I just like blindly, I'm like, okay, well, they tell me to go to Seattle, so I'm going to go to Seattle. So I'm sitting there, and they're like, yeah, so you start at this much an hour, and then you get automatic raises every 6 months. I'm like, every 6 months I get an automatic raise, regardless of whether I'm good at my job or not. Yes. Okay, I can get on board with that. And then you get this much in insurance coverage. Like, just they started listing all the benefits, and like, you can go to school for free, your wife can go to school for free, your kids can go to school, not for free, but like, it's all included in the benefit package of being part of this union now. I never understood the benefits of being in a union. Yeah, I'd always heard the negatives of unions, which I understand, but
there's definitely downsides, but like,
of course,
the benefits are pretty sweet.
Of course, there's downsides to everything. I mean, if you're being honest with yourself, there's no perfect anything. Regardless of what you do in your life, there's going to be, you step in like a pond, and it lets these little like waves out to the sides of the pond. And maybe that's going to do something good, or maybe it's going to kill, you know, a bug that is not going to feed an animal that's not going to feed it. You know, it's like everything you do has a chain reaction to something, and both good and bad can and probably do come from those things. But it's just once they started, I'm like, I would be so stupid not to take this job. Like, this is what I want. I want a job that is dependable. I want with a company that's been around for like 100 years and is doing incredibly successful right now. Right now, we're building 52 737s a day, every single day. Today I'm talking to you and they made 52, and tomorrow they're going to make another 52.
Wow.
By May, we're going to be making 56. And like in 5 years, they want to be up to like 70. Like, so they've got this investment. They've like, flying is becoming way more viable, not just here, but like in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. All these companies are starting. And I know from living in this area that Boeing has been around for a while. Like, yes, it has laid people off in the past, and yes, people have gone on strike in the past. But in general, it is a fairly stable company. I often say that if I don't take advantage of any of the opportunities, like if I just go into work every day and I do my wire bundle job, and I can do that for 20 years or 30 years, I will be super lucky. I will be blessed because I've had a job for that long. It's been that stable, that's provided for my family, that has created a way for me to retire. But all of the benefits that I can take advantage of, like for example, I'm 15 credits away from getting my bachelor's degree. Through Boeing, if I graduate with a bachelor's degree while I'm working for Boeing, they give you 100 shares of stock.
That's amazing.
Their stock right now is $405 per share.
Serious?
That's $40,000.
Wow.
If I finish school.
Go do it and then get a house.
Which they will pay for me to do.
Wow.
So that's what I mean. It's like, I've gone out and I've like ran around and I'm not ever going to be super rich, but I've been super poor, but I've been like doing what I want to do. Like if an opportunity has come up, I'm like, yeah, I can go live in Thailand. Like I'm not doing anything else. So yeah, I can go live in Honduras. And now have this opportunity to be like, yeah, I can work a 9-to-5 job. I can work overtime if I want. I have money for my family. I have a plan for making that, like helping my family stay successful. And really, ever since I got married to Allegra, like just that plan has come into, like those wheels have started to turn. And justice is just another added thing. Like each step is making me more, what I consider for myself, more responsible for like how, like I have a plan now of how I want to live my life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with not, but it's where I want to be right now. Like I was very comfortable not having a plan. And then I got to a point where it's like, I was getting uncomfortable not having a plan. So now I want to have a plan. But like, I understand the reverse. I understand having a plan and just being like, it's too structured for me. Like, I just want some freedom.
Yeah.
Because I think we have that intrinsically built into us. Like, you can't be chained all the time, and you can't just be 100% wherever the wind takes you all the time.
Right.
Again, it's going to go back to my little theme of balance. Like, you got to feel all of it, and then you can make better decisions. You're like, I know what this is like, and I know what this is like. I'm going to choose this. Instead of just being, well, I'm a free spirit, so I guess I'm just going to go do this and not have any control over what you're doing.
Right. Well,
or any like logical thought as to why you're doing that.
I love that, like, I actually think if there is like a right way to do it, I feel like you're closer to that because you started with the freedom and the craziness. And like, I feel like you're talking about earlier, like, it's not necessarily like you were stressed out, but really that is very stressful. Even if it's a fun, good stress, it's like you're under constant, looking out and paying attention and getting things done, whatever. But you did that at a time where it was like, I think easier to do it as far as geopolitics and whatever go, but also you're younger, you can handle it better. But
imagine this, like I just thought about this, when you say it was easier to do it, it was, but there was also no internet or like, I had no, again, I didn't plan anything. Like right now you could do it way different. Like I could go online, I could buy my ticket, I could like I could look at a Google Maps and like see where it is. I could physically like, yeah, exactly. I could virtually look at the street of the hostel I'm going to stay on.
That's a good point.
So, but I don't know if that's easier. You know, again, I think sometimes having a level of being naive is helpful because you can overcomplicate things sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
you know, like just having that faith of like, well, I don't know. I'm sure my mother was scared to death. Like I cannot imagine.
Yes, that's a mom's job though. And now you probably understand that better being a father.
Oh, I mean, he's only 9 months old now. And like, so I'm just, if he did the same, like, I can't imagine your kid leaving and maybe talking to him twice a month. And like, when he calls, like he's in some country in some other part of the world and there's like police car sirens in the background. And you're just like, what is happening? Like, I don't know. There was a riot while I was there. Like, people were tipping over cars and burning down buildings.
Because of football?
No, it was because some where I lived in was called Brixton, and Brixton is a mostly black neighborhood, predominantly black neighborhood. And right before I had gotten there, this is in 1995, a couple of local men had been arrested, put in jail, and then died in jail. It happened 3 times.
Whoa.
So then the community decided to meet in front of the jailhouse and have like a rally as to like asking for somebody to say like, why is this happening? Why does it
keep happening to these people?
Yeah,
right?
Is this a coincidence or what? So they showed up for this. And then in answer to that, the Brixton police showed up in full riot gear, which then caused people to riot.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So
it was like their expectation of that. They could have come in just chill and been like, hey, let's figure this out.
I'm very, I don't know the rules there. Like I know here, you do have, as long as, especially if you get a permit, if you're going to have that many people, you have the freedom to assemble. And I don't know if that's the same in London or what.
Yeah, I don't either. It might not be.
And I haven't looked it up in the 20 years that I could have.
Yeah.
Obviously,
the internet has come around.
I know. But we were sitting in the social room of this junked out hostel. The hostel I lived in was a piece of junk, but the people that lived there were amazing, which made it worth it. But we were sitting in there, and there was a TV, and they were reporting on this riot in Brixton. And we're like, wow. And Brixton's a pretty big place. It's not like you would expect, like, just because it was happening. It's like Capitol Hill. Like, there's something happening on Capitol Hill. Well, you could be on Capitol Hill, but 3 blocks removed and not even know that it was happening.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then just like not a couple seconds after we found out that there was a riot, this tire rolled past the window down the street that was on fire. This rubber tire just rolling down the road, like, sweet, let's go outside. So we all went outside to go look, and we just watched people riot. And I saw somebody throw a Molotov cocktail inside a building, like a furniture building.
Oh my God.
My friend got hit in the head with a brick.
What?
Yeah, then we decided to go inside.
Yeah, this is actually a bad idea on second thought.
Maybe you're not supposed to be like a tourist looking at a riot. Like, oh, the culture here is so interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And mom was at home crying.
Or it's like when I lived in Istanbul and like a bomb would go off. Like you lived in Istanbul too, like bombs went off. I never saw one, I never heard one. But anytime when one went off, like our aunt would like send me an email or call and be like, I heard a bomb went off, are you okay? I'm like, I didn't
even know that happened.
Yeah. But I understand where that comes from, because you just know like Brandt's in Istanbul, Istanbul's being bombed. When I lived in when I lived in Thailand, the government, there was a coup to take out the government, or the army went after the government. And so like there were tanks driving down the main street of Bangkok, and we were like an hour east of Bangkok. I had no idea it was even happening.
Oh my God.
But people that knew that we were in Thailand were like, you got to get out.
That's totally how it is with war, as far as my experience. Also, when I was in Turkey, I visited the Far East. I'm sorry, I forget the name of the town, because I'm a dick. And
Did you know that there's a town out there called Batman?
I did, yes. Batman, Turkey is where I think that's where the giant earthquake happened when I was in Istanbul, where everyone was calling me saying like, are you okay? And I'm like, that's literally the other side of the country.
Right.
I'm fine. But yeah, we went all the way to some tiny Eastern village right on the border with Syria. And people were like, why are you going there? There's war in Syria right now. And I'm like, there's war in Syria, but like, there's no war in that little town,
Right.
you know, and I mean, there's a possibility it could like spill out suddenly, but I don't think that's really how things go.
Right.
It
No,
was totally fine.
it's like you said, it's like people have a picture of something, and granted, if you've never been there, you don't know. You don't know the proximity of everything. All you've heard is that, yeah, it's trouble in the Middle East, and Turkey borders Iraq and Syria and Iran or whatever, and like, so that's obviously a dangerous place then.
Right.
And you're like,
Yeah, it's easy to fear what you don't know, and
right.
it's harder to actually go and see for yourself what it's like. And it is hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy to immerse in another culture.
Well, and it's easy just to lay a blanket of fear out there, then be like, well, yeah, there is war, but actually it's in these remote spots, and you know, it's just, nope, there's war, it's super dangerous, don't go.
Yeah. And actually the people out there are like some of the nicest people I've ever encountered in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Traveling
is, I mean, that's one of the benefits you could get from traveling, for sure. It worked double on me. So if I'm being honest real quick, like when I left the country, I was pretty sick, like, and I'd been fed a lot of misinformation that I realize now was misinformation, but I was ashamed of the country that I lived in.
Yeah.
I felt that that the rest of the world was talking against us, and like we were bullies or something like that. Like I was just, shame is a good word. I was ashamed. And then I traveled for like 10 years, and I realized everywhere I went, Greece, Turkey, when I was working in Turkey, like students, one of the most popular questions that was asked of me was like, why are you working here? You could work in the United States.
Yeah.
You know, like people, not only were the majority of people that I talked to and met, not like, oh, you're from America, that place sucks. Like I was told the first time when I was 18 years old, tell people you're from Canada.
Right. I remember hearing that too.
The world hates Americans. I've never met, I'm sure there are people that hate Americans, but I've never met a person that's like, oh, you're from America? I hate you.
Oh, yeah, same thing. And in fact, did you find, because what I found too is that people would then be like, if you disparaged America at all, especially after they're telling you how much they love it and want to go there or whatever, they would be kind of like, well, don't you love your own country? Like this very, it's not like a nationalism that's this fervent patriotic, like we hate everyone but ourselves, but there's like this nationalistic pride that I found in most countries I went to, even countries that were doing really poorly. Like when I went to Uruguay, very poor country, but people there still love their country. And they were shocked and like ashamed for me if I didn't love my country.
Yeah.
And I've realized, because I had the same sort of, I think, programming, almost conditioning to like hate the United States. And I've more recently decided that we have this beautiful experiment of a nation that we're trying, and it could continue to be something beautiful if we don't let it be destroyed. And it's a really good opportunity that shouldn't be wasted, I think. So I have
to be very vigilant in that sense, because the way information is passed now, we have something super special that can be turned into something amazing if we don't let people destroy it.
Yes.
And there are people out there that are definitely trying to destroy it.
Like literally, it seems the more I look at that it's like a systematic trying to take apart and erode the things that make this nation what it is. Namely our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And it's really sneaky too, because I feel like it's being done. I feel like it's being done from both sides, honestly, if you're looking at a left-right political spectrum, because I think it comes from somewhere beyond like that spectrum. But the left, I feel like, is even more, I don't know the right word. It's more of a betrayal when the left is eroding those rights, because I feel like the left has this illusion about it that it's for the people and for
rights. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And yet the one that seems to be attacking really specific rights the most critically and the most aggressively.
Right. I agree probably with everything you just said. And again, it creates that line, like you have the left and you have the right. And anytime somebody says, well, the left is this way and the right is this way, like I start to zone out, because neither side is 100% good or 100% bad, but you have to look at the tactics they're using. I think a good example, like right now, one of the things I'm finding is that people on the right, like if you're pro, or let me start over. If you're anti-abortion, you're like a conservative. You're like, I'm against abortion. Like that person is telling you that they are against abortion. If you're on the other side of that, you could say, well, I'm pro-choice. And then you start pointing out what all the benefits are. They're like, I think the woman has the right to choose. And you can make your point of view sound like you're coming from a place of compassion and caring, that you are the nice person, that you're the good guy. And this person that has verbally said that they are against a woman choosing, look at that horrible person, because that person is telling the truth when the other person is just veiling what they actually believe and selling it as something better than it is.
Yeah.
So it's very important to like disseminate what somebody's actually saying, what their point of view is, because it's so easy to like say we are the good guys and they are the bad guys. You're like, but you have a real long history of being actually the racist ones and the ones that are pushing this agenda to keep Black people poor, or pushing this agenda to kill babies when they're 17 years old.
Yeah, just gets later.
And you have to wonder, like, why? Like, it doesn't come. They sell it for like it's coming from a place of love and caring. Like, we respect people enough to make their own choices. You're like, yeah, that the country is founded on that. Like, take the government away from it and let them. You don't have to regulate every single thing. I'm getting political, but my general point is like, careful who you affiliate with and listen to what people are actually saying and what they want. Somebody that's saying, well, I think we should have universal schools. Everybody should be able to go to school. And that sounds nice. Like, God, it would be awesome if I didn't have student debt and school was free. But then what does going to school mean if everybody goes? Like 50 years ago, if you went to school and you were a architect or a banker or a lawyer, then you got those kind of jobs, and you had to get good grades and you had to struggle and sacrifice in order to get what in your mind was probably a better job and therefore a better life.
And you can also afford it more easily back then.
Yeah. If you give everybody school now, then it's, how do you, like, everybody can't be doctors. Everybody can't be lawyers. Everybody can't be, why would you want the whole population to go to a school unless you want to program them?
Also, I have very little knowledge of this. I'm pretty ignorant of it, but I did meet a girl from Canada who went to school in France. And apparently in France, there's free education, higher education for everyone. And she hated it. She was like, this is a good school and I can get a good education out of it. She said, but the thing that sucked was that because everybody was just given this, more than half of the kids in any given class were just didn't care about anything, would like talk and be disrespectful, would not really try or study. And so the conversation was brought down, because a lot of what you learn in college, as far as I'm concerned, is when you're actually there discussing with other people the ideas that you're learning about, right? Like I need that one-on-one or group interaction in order to sort of process information. And so that aspect was brought down as well. Even if you have a great professor, it's like difficult, to learn in this environment. And I was just like, well, that's a huge downside to giving everyone education.
If you take in the phrase like, you're as strong as your weakest link, and that's fine. But if you have to think about what you're doing if you're allowing a bunch of weak links into the same thing on purpose. Like that's anytime you give somebody something, they could be very appreciative, like, oh, thank you for this, but they didn't work for it. They don't know what it's like to earn it. And it doesn't mean that much to them. They can still appreciate it, but it means something more. Like, I imagine that our mother's nursing degree means way more than, because she had to sacrifice so much to do it. She had to do a very tumultuous part of her life, deal with her family, deal with working, deal with going to school, all in the hopes of just trying to do better and trying to do better. And once that kind of happened, like at the end of the day, you probably feel like relief and satisfaction because like, I did this. If somebody just gave everybody the same job and it lowered all the wages and things like that, you're like, okay, sweet, now I'm a nurse, but everybody else is too, and nobody really is doing a very good job at it because nobody cares because they didn't have to work for it.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. It's like, but then you start talking about, well, then you're leaving people out and that's not fair. And I don't know if that's a valid argument. Like,
I don't think it is. I mean, it's like only 600 people get to go swim with humpback whales a year. It's like not, if everybody did, it ruins it. It ruins the environment and the experience and the whales' enjoyment of their life. So like, that's not a great idea.
And maybe it's not fair, but I don't care about things being fair is not the most important thing to me.
I wonder sometimes what people think fair even means, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it is it fair? Is it not fair that someone who didn't care about it, didn't try, and didn't, you know, work to get there, got somewhere? Like, I think that's pretty fair. And if you're talking about genuine lack of access to something, I could be very privileged and just ignorant about it, but I don't think that happens very often. I think, like, especially in the day of the internet, that you can go apply to any college.
So that's an interesting thing too. And then like again, like if you want to, you can learn. There are public universities. There are libraries where you can get resources. There is the internet where you can get whatever information you want. It sounds to me, and maybe I'm like you, maybe I'm super privileged. I don't feel very privileged, but maybe I'm so privileged that I don't feel privileged.
True.
That
that's a mind fuck.
Yeah, that I'm trying to, in this country specifically, in the United States, like what population of people don't have access to one of those things? You know, and then if that is true, like how hard is it for you to move from the station you're in to a station where that would be possible? Because if it's very hard, then do it. If it's super hard, then do it. If it's impossible, well, then that's something that needs to be discussed. But just because something is very hard doesn't mean that it should be just, well, let's give it for free though.
Yeah, I don't know like where that, you know, I have students sometimes too that are like, well, I can't do this because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. And I'm like, you could do it. You're choosing not to. Like, it's hard. That doesn't mean it's easy to do the thing, but like, whatever. I'm sure we both have stories where like I rode my bike in the freezing snow like this at like 4 a.m. to get to class by 6 a.m. because I lived 17 miles from my college and didn't have a car.
Jeez.
You know, like both ways, obviously, but like that was a hard time in my life. And I also had a job that I rode my bicycle to at like, you know, like you can do it. I could have walked even, right? Like I could do it. You just like, how hard is it? But like,
or
if
you could use the excuse like, I don't have a car, so I can't get a job.
Right. Or I could have done nothing and not done any of that stuff. It was hard.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that gets overlooked of like, things that are hard aren't necessarily bad. Having somebody that has it easier than you does not make it unfair. It just means that that person has it easier than you, and you have to work harder to try to even get the same thing.
Yes. If there's actual systemic things in place that are literally targeting or attacking, like I think there's very unfair laws about cocaine and crack in most places, and that's like seems pretty targeted at a certain group, and like there's sentencing things. Like there are issues I think that we could look at in our society that really are unfair or systemically not right. But I don't think there's so many of them that you are, generally speaking, cut out from opportunity for the most part.
And they're definitely not the issues that are specifically being talked about from either point of view on the spectrum of the things that are important to eradicate or to help. Like this is, you can look at specific examples, but instead you want to generalize things and say, I read something the other day, like how prolific a problem blackface is in America.
What?
Like it's so prolific, like it's just, and I'm thinking like, I've seen it 3 times in my life. And usually it was on a program that was kind of highlighting
how bad it was.
How bad it was, not like, isn't this funny?
Yes. No, I've literally never seen any real life example of blackface in my life.
Yeah, of like people just walking down the street or showing up at a party. Never. But apparently, like, because one person did it, and it's not humorous, but it's ironic that it's a Democrat this time, and so now the Democrats have to like, oh, we're not racist. Well, you guys are the racist ones. Oh, we have a racist person. Oh no. Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, our image has broken. He made a bad decision 20 years ago, so he should be fired. But yeah, like prolific. It's a prolific problem. It's just like you overblow these things and you work on people's emotions and you get them all riled up at how awful things are. And then you go outside and you're like, oh no, it's fine.
Yeah, there's no race riots in my street, and
we're all getting along fine.
I'm gonna say like there weren't a lot of black people. There weren't a lot of people of color in general in our where we grew up. But the cops were still unfairly aggressive towards people like me you know, not because of my race, but because I was a target, because I was clearly like a drug user and a little piece of shit. So, you know,
that was very unfair of the cops to target a piece of shit drug user.
Right. But I mean, so like, I think there's going to be some problems anywhere, and obviously we should like address those. But I think it's interesting how blown up a lot of the incidents that we're looking at seem to be, such as the much talked about mega hat kit. Was he actually wearing a mega hat?
He was. He had bought it that day.
Okay, yeah. That whole interaction. My favorite meme of that so far is, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like him with a guy swinging a stick millimeters from his nose. That picture where he's smiling, not even smiling, where he looks genuinely like discomforted and like freaked out and just kind of like, you know, and the meme says that moment when you have to smile through a creepy person invading your space until you can figure out how to get out of the situation. And right below that is a picture of Joe Biden like groping little girls at that picture shoot.
Yes, that's exactly.
I was like, snap.
It's ridiculous on both parts. It's like cherry picking something because you know it's going to create outrage, creating a story that doesn't exist because you know it's going to get people to watch, and it's so manipulative. And the thing that frustrates me the most is I don't consider myself a very intelligent person, but if I can see something and be like, this isn't real, right? But most people are like, oh, isn't that an outrage? I'm like, but it's not real. Nothing is happening in this. If you take if you take that whole incident, that specific one you're talking about, with the kids and the Black Israelites and the Native American or the indigenous people or however you want to self-identify, and you look at, like, you had a drone above them and you looked at the event that happened, it wouldn't be news because nothing happened.
Happened. If you took the media out of this entirely, that moment would have ended when it ended.
If you didn't have phones and things like that, because that's the other thing. You had a phone, so somebody was able to take a still from a video that fit their agenda of this kid smirking, and they had to watch the whole video. So they had to choose a specific one in which he looked the most smirkiness in it. And then
it was aggressive, though. That was an aggressive way to smirk and stand.
Because it wasn't a photograph, it was a video. So if somebody sends you a photograph, you're like, okay, well, he's smirking. But if somebody sends you a video, like, well, take that still because he looks the smirkiest in it, and then we're going to make the story about this.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, this should, if nothing else, wake people up to the fact that the media has a really, really specific agenda.
Yeah, of manipulation on either side. You have to be super,
right.
Like, I'm not opposed to like listening to the media or watching the news, but in the back of your mind, try to hear both stories if you can. Try to get multiple sources if you care. But at the very least, in the back of your mind, say like, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
Or this is not the whole story.
Right.
This is the story you want me to hear, but this is obviously not the whole story. Because even, again, if we follow that train of thought, if nobody had a phone and that incident happened, it would never have been reported. It wouldn't have been racist. It wouldn't have been showing how white people still to this day flex their muscles over indigenous people. Like that was that boy's point that day, was to go find a Native American and then show how white people are better than.
Yeah.
It's so contrived.
So contrived. And yet so effective in triggering so many people's emotional.
Oh, the outrage was just dripping. It was dripping off the ceilings, how mad people were.
Well, we were just talking last night with somebody that I interviewed that we were talking about the difference between, you know, being kind of, it's like identity politics meets like this need to share your beliefs about something, you know, and your moral values about like that virtue signaling thing is now more important than anything else. More important than saying like, hey, this is my life choice. Like I chose to become a wire package coordinator or whatever the thing you're doing. And here's why, and here's like what I'm enjoying about it. And like, you know, like talking about what you're actually doing in life. Instead of that, we're just like, well, I believe this about this. It's like, that might be the least important thing we can share with each other.
Yeah, the most vapid thing that I could possibly know about you.
Yeah.
is that, yes. Not like where you come from, what experiences made you the way you are. What do you actually care about? Like, Allegra and I have been talking a lot about the pros and cons of social media, and is social media inherently evil? I don't think it's inherently evil. I think it's a tool like anything else. It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. But again, look at how social media is being used. Look at the messages that are being promoted on social media. Look at the things that are being shared. It's so easy. Like people, you went from a time 15 or 20 years ago, not that long ago, where you probably kept most of your opinions to yourself because on the off chance that you would offend somebody. Like there used to be a time where you would have a family dinner and it was almost always understood. You rarely talked about politics. You rarely talked about religion. You rarely talked about abortion because you couldn't just look at somebody and know whether or not they agreed with you, and they're pretty hot button topics. So if you're in a mixed company, stay away from those 3 topics and generally you're going to get along fine. Now it's maybe you still do that in public, but in private or on your Twitter or Instagram or whatever, you can show your outrage and like let everybody see how outraged you are, which makes you feel good about yourself and show that you're a decent human being and those people over there are not decent human beings. Look how I stand up for people. All you did was type something into your phone. You're not actually doing anything. You're not actually standing up for somebody. You're not going out to try to change the law that you think is unjust. Like I love people that jump on and like, that's right, we should get paid $20 an hour. It's an outrage that we're not getting paid $20 an hour. Like, well, are you doing anything to make it so that we get paid $20 an hour? Or are you just showing your outrage? Because your outrage isn't going to get anything done.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. That also correlates with the episode I just did with the guy's kind of catchphrases like, shut up and do something.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that. Like, really, shut up and do something. Even if it's like not related to politics, especially if it's not related to politics or whatever, like just do stuff.
Yeah. It's super good advice. It would be way more useful if people did that. You would be a happier person if you yourself did that, if you're not already doing it. I don't want to assume that people aren't, but like, I can't, it's hard for me to imagine the person that cares so much to voice their opinion on Facebook or Twitter 12 times a day to show other people that they don't probably even know or care. That's the other thing. It's like your friends, you can't have 400 friends.
No, you literally can't.
You can have like 3, maybe 5. It's really hard to have more than that many friends because you don't have the time to put in with the work that it takes to be friends with them. It's good if you can start like having friends at a young age and then they kind of are your friends through default as you get older. So you can, like, I have people in my life that I talk to a couple times a year, but they are my friends. And if I need them, they will be there. But like right now, I'm not going to make it. I don't need any friends. Like, yeah. I don't need a bunch of people to validate my thoughts. I have my wife and my family, and then the 5 or 6 people outside of that group that I care about.
Yeah. And I think that people hopefully people understand for the most part, those are the places where you're going to find the most internal growth is by being that close with people. And like you're saying, you can only do that with a handful of people. So hopefully they're good ones to explore that stuff with. But like, yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of point of life.
And if you cultivate those close relationships and if you work at making sure that, and they're not always going to be okay either. I mean, that's the thing with, at least with your friends, like you have chosen them because you like some quality about them. I mean, they're going to be people in your family that you downright loathe, but they're your family. And yeah. Because of that, you find a way to make it work. And it doesn't always, but there's always this underlying thing, like you are my family. So regardless of anything else in the world, that's never, ever going to change. And that's important to me. Like, if you can cultivate those relationships, the other things are not like, they can't be important. You don't have time in your life for them to be important. And you realize that they're really not.
Well, I feel like your son, my nephew, is going to have the best experience with you and Allegra as his parents because you both went through life. You did a lot of self-exploration and experience and then came back to intentionally make this family. And you're bringing all of that wisdom into that, and all of that understanding of how important that relationship is. It's like primary to him. It's like absolutely necessary for his good development, but so few children actually get that sort of intentional parenting and intentional love and structure. So that's going to be exciting.
You can say, thank you very much. It was getting pregnant wasn't, we talked about getting pregnant, but it wasn't like, we're going to work really hard at it. We're more like, we're getting older. If it happens though, that would be a blessing, and we would accept that. And then it happened not that long after we made that decision. And then every step of the way is like, yes, we're doing this on purpose. And I'm sure somebody out there could say, well, you're very privileged because you live in an environment where you're able to work and she's able to stay home. It's super hard for me to work and for her to stay home.
Yeah.
I'm starting at a new job. I'm not going to say what my wage is, but it's not amazing. Stretch. Yes, it's not amazing. But the way that we live is also very helpful, and not a lot of people have that. So I guess there is some privilege as well, but there's a lot of sacrifice. Like if we don't have running water, we have to poop outside. Like we have an outhouse. But that's a decision that we made, and we have decided to make sacrifices in order to, because it's important to us that one of us is home with him at all times. And I know not everybody can make that decision, and maybe that's not the best decision for everybody. I'm not going to go into that, but if you want to, you can. You just have to sacrifice. So when I hear people say like, no, we both have to work. I would love it if I could stay home, but we both have to. You don't have to. You're choosing to. It's like what you said earlier. And I don't have anything against that, but be honest with yourself. Like
that's the thing.
Do it.
Be honest, because like I think people forget that like you don't need much. Yeah. Like you really don't need much. If you're not gonna like have some sort of vice that costs money, and, you know, like you don't have.
We purposely surround ourselves with things that we don't need, but that we like and want around us.
Yeah.
But you don't need it. No. It's nice having it for sure.
I'm not going to argue that. Without it, you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it comes down. It's just, and it's not for everybody. It's definitely not supposed to be preachy. But if there are things that you want, don't let people say, well, you can't have it and it's not fair. We're going to change it to make sure you get it. Be like, no, I'm going to do it for myself. I can. It's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult. It's not like I'm rich coming from the family. I mean, you know us growing up. I didn't come from a place where I was like, I have enough money to travel around the world for a decade.
No, we've been homeless at times.
Yes, I have definitely been homeless. But I made it work. You know, you find a way. You decide what you want to do, and you sacrifice things along the way, and you decide what's important, and you kind of go from there.
Right. I love that. I love that message you have to share with people about life in general, if you want to summarize everything.
I want to summarize everything. God,
life into just a few phrases.
I will say this year, it's hard to put into words. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard this before, like, you know, having a child changes you, or you don't know what it's like to be a parent. And from everything from like, oh, when you have a kid, you never sleep. You don't know what it's like. You're like, yeah, I'm sure you don't. But you honestly don't know what it's like to not sleep and have a child for like months at a time. Like these things that I'm starting to realize. But one of probably the greatest things that I've gotten out of the last year that's kind of solidified how I felt, but I've never really dwelt on it, is that like love, the love that I know exists now and has always existed, but I just wasn't open to it, is powering me to do everything that I'm doing. Like seeing life happen, and being in tune with that, because it happens all around you all the time. Look out the window, it's happening. But it's like once you find that connection and realize that you're a part of it, and then realize that this is here because of you and despite you and in connection with you all at the same time, it's hard for me to wrap my head around. And if I was to give like advice or something, like there's a level of trust that you can have that is healthy to have, and not letting all this nonsense, all this noise, all these like mosquitoes of information flying around your head scare you or put you off or make you feel like you're isolated or like the world doesn't exist the way you thought. Like there are people around you that are important to you. There are people that you can invest your time in that are worthwhile. And that is way more important than the overall arching connection of people's opinions or the political state of the country or the state of the planet even. I mean, you can't, there's no way that you can wrap your head around the state of the planet if you don't have a connection with yourself and like keep yourself in order and then keep your relationships in order and then focus on that. Like you can't go out there and be like, I'm going to change the world, but be like a total mess on the inside. You know, you need to find something that helps you stay grounded, that helps you stay focused and keeps all of that unnecessary noise that is, in my opinion, created to stifle you.
Yes.
And keep you like just kind of downtrodden. Because fear and doubt are very, very powerful emotions. And they can build up on you without you even noticing. And then you can get to the point where like you feel so far down that it's impossible to get up. And I've been there too. I've been in places where there was no light, and I couldn't understand why anybody would want to continue going forward because it didn't make any sense. But those are fleeting, and people get lost on purpose. The point is to try to get found and find something that'll anchor you to that in whatever way that means to you. But it's there and it's possible. And not to be a cliche, but you can feel alone, but you're not. There's that love there. And I think it connects us all if you are open to it.
I love that message because I feel like it hits on the whole theme, you know, like all your travels and finding the right people to help at the right time and like the whales and interacting with them and now creating this life in the world. And I think it's important for people to hear that because I think on one level, we're kind of being programmed, I think, also out of making children or, you know, feeling too afraid to bring a kid into this world. And so like you're saying, like trust in that process is still can be a beautiful place, but more importantly, like that personal connection, you know, bringing it back to that personal individual level where you're healthy in yourself, but you're connected to like that shit that is the best, most important part of life is like, especially maybe most so in the form of your son.
Yeah.
But really with like all of the people around you.
Yeah. Like, it's like he was a conduit that has definitely helped and it's always been there, but you don't always pay attention. You know, we can busy ourselves very easily with things that aren't of consequence. I do want to plug something. If you've never read The Little Prince, which is a book for children, but I think it's actually a book for adults.
Yes,
definitely. But there's parts in there, they talk about matters of consequence and how adults focus on matters of consequence. And this is very important to me. It's very easy to get caught up in matters of consequence. And it's important to define what consequence is for you, because it's rarely what you do, what your job is, that items that you surround yourself with. And I just quickly, I know I'm rambling now, but you said something that I think is interesting. Like, you do it, whether it's programming or not, our lives are being made to be lived as an isolationist very easily. Like you're almost encouraged, like you don't need your friends. You can have your video game system that is connected with your other friends. They don't have to come over to your house and play video games. You can play online. You and I don't have to talk anymore. We can just do this and do it over the computer. You can live in a box all by yourself with your sex robot and your thousands of friends on Facebook and be totally fulfilled. And that probably could feel fulfilling until you actually, you know, it seems like people are moving towards an area of not interacting with each other because it's easier not to interact with each other.
Way easier.
Like, I don't want to talk to you know, that girl's really cute, but I don't want to talk to her. So I'm just gonna, maybe I'll send her a text message instead, or maybe I'll just go home and do nothing because that's the easiest path. Like, oh, my little boy is crawling towards me.
Oh my God, that's too cute.
I know.
Okay.
But anyways,
well,
yes.
We can wrap things up so you can have some time with him. But
thank you.
I do appreciate that we brought it back to that connection. I do think it's harder these days when we're being that isolated and we're getting that much programming to be disconnected. It is harder to connect with people because now it's becoming almost strange. You know, like if you're going to initiate contact with someone for really no reason other than to say like hello and ask them about their day or whatever, it's like weird.
Yeah, or even to like, the other day I was at work and this older woman, like you know, older than me. She was probably in her 50s, walked by, and her perfume was, it was like perfect. It smelled nice. It wasn't overpowering. It smelled nice. And my instinct was like, wow, that smells really nice. And then I thought like, well, am I going to be creepy? Am I going to be like sexually offensive? Am I going to be like a weird stalker? Like
toxic masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. Telling somebody they look nice, or that's a nice, I don't know. It's like you're being conditioned to just not interact with people for fear of offending or doing something that's going to be portrayed not in a way that you intend.
Right.
So I just kept it to myself.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
All right.
So as much as this can help, because like it is nice to be able to contact and be in contact with people all over the place, but it is also nice to step out and realize that the physical stuff is good as well.
Yes, better. In fact, more important, I'd say, for sure.
I would agree.
All right. Well, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom, according to my man, Brandt Brown. Brother, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it was awesome. Thank you. I hope to be back someday.
Yes, we'd love to have you back again. So there are infinite, stunningly beautiful experiences to be had as humans with sensory organs on this plane called Earth. It is difficult to imagine sometimes from our lonely inner worlds how we might access some of the greatest adventures and the largest mysteries. But as many have said who are far wiser than I, it always starts with just a single step. Start by imagining yourself doing what you dream, and then don't stop taking steps toward it. And as you move ever further toward the best vision of your highest truth of yourself, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
That is perfect.